COVID-19 pandemic, online teaching and learning have become an everyday practice in higher education. The digital transformation, which was already in progress, has accelerated and is expected to continue even in the post-COVID era. To fulfill the needs of that period, many online meeting systems were used to transform the traditional way of teaching and learning into digital courses. So, we decided to evaluate some of these systems from an educational perspective. Here, we present the procedure and the findings from our usability evaluation on one of the most widely used tools for synchronous online teaching and learning, Zoom versus competitors. First, we present the context and the methods of the study, then the results of the used methods, and finally, study findings and recommendations. As for the context of the study, let's clarify its characteristics. The evaluators were divided into 3 groups of experts that consisted of 3 to 2 members each. The time of the study was the winter semester of the academic year 2020-2021. The study occurred in Greece and most of it was online. All 3 groups of experts evaluated Zoom system. Each group of experts evaluated 2 systems of their choice in contrast to Zoom. Expert Group A chose Microsoft Teams and Google Meet. Expert Group B, Microsoft Teams and Cisco WebEx, and Expert Group C, Cisco WebEx and Skype for Business. The roadmap of every group was, first, to define the typical users and the use case scenarios, then to perform an expert-based evaluation using heuristics and keystroke level analysis, and finally, to survey users' views through interviews, questionnaires, and user studies. The results from every group were collected and categorized based on the evaluation method. All the groups performed the same expert-based evaluation. These techniques were performed within a few months as the study had a time limit. These methods were personas and scenarios of use, keystroke analysis, and Nielsen heuristics. To involve users, online questionnaires were used by 2 of the groups, and to go further and get in touch with the users, face-to-face interviews and user testing took place. In the 2 final methods, the number of users was small because the restrictions of the COVID-19 pandemic had to be respected. Continuing with the results of the study, the personas and the definition of some typical scenarios of use helped experts to empathize with the users and get to know their habits. The main personas that were created are professor and the college student. As for the basic scenarios of use, Expert Group A analyzed the typical scenarios that a professor would apply in his daily routine at the physical class, which now has to transform to fit in the digital world. These typical scenarios are to give a lecture, assign exercise, moderate while teaching, organize and run labs, one-to-one tuition, and run a seminar. The other 2 groups focused on the typical scenarios that the professor has to apply in the COVID-19 era. These are scheduled lectures, login and share screen, and the act of presenting the desktop screen to give a lecture. A thing to mention here is that Expert Group A in most of the evaluations focused on the college students' side, based on the limitations of the era and to get deeper into specific assets. The same theory continued in stating some typical use case scenarios for college students. On the one hand, Expert Group A mentioned attending a lecture, presenting a project work, attending a lab and working in groups, working on exercise and sharing solutions, and attending a seminar. On the other hand, the other groups focus on the scenarios of login, join a lecture, and sharing screen. The first evaluation that all of the groups conducted was the heuristic evaluation. This is a widely applied usability evaluation technique that was combined with the personas and scenarios. The standard 10 heuristics of Nielsen were used as a guide for identifying design limitations given the defined scenarios of use. One of the violations is the raise hand issue. One of the most usual techniques that have been used in natural courses is to raise a hand to ask the permission from the teacher to speak. Many online teaching systems have applied this functionality to reproduce this physical way of teaching and learning. However, in Zoom, this option is hidden inside the participants section, which makes it difficult for the user to find it and click it. Breakout rooms allow creating groups of people that participate in the meeting to work in groups. This specific section also has some design flaws. The administrator of the meeting can set the groups based on his needs, randomly to put people in a specific room, or he can let the students pick the room that they want to join. Based on the specific option that the administration has created, different buttons appear. In one of them, the option of asking for help is hidden inside the breakout room button. Also, the conversations are not visible to everyone at any time. The user can only see the chat from the moment he entered the meeting or the specific group and after. Also, some of the indications, like everyone, are misleading. What does everyone mean? Everyone in the room or everyone in the whole meeting course? Furthermore, there is a lack of consistency between the icons that are used, like those pictures. The left ones are shown before joining a meeting, and the right ones are shown after joining a meeting. These icons are reactive buttons with functionality. Here are the numbers of violations that each team discovered in every system that they evaluated. The average number of violations that were found in Zoom was 7.6, which is less than every other system except Cisco WebEx. Keystroke level analysis predicts how long it will take an expert user to accomplish a routine task without errors. All three expert groups used this approach in their studies. It should be mentioned that this method of evaluation does not create suggestions for design as with the heuristic evaluation study, but rather confirms our qualitative findings of the methods. As each group may have been based on different assumptions of the keystrokes, we converted the absolute times to percentages. Expert group A evaluated 4 tasks, expert group B 1 and expert group C 5. Starting from the task, which is keystrokes time is less, share screen, which is the option of the presenter to show his desktop screen to the participants, is faster than in Teams. Schedule a meeting is way faster than in WebEx and Skype for Business, and sign in is faster than in WebEx and Skype for Business. Continuing with the tasks that are completed slower than the other platforms are raising hand, is the task that we already mentioned in the heuristic evaluation, which is way slower than in Google Meet and Microsoft Teams. Sending a message in the chat is slower than in Google Meet and Microsoft Teams, and starting and entering a lecture is slower than in Skype for Business. Ending with the tasks that take less time at one system and more at another. Sign in, start a meeting, and share screen is faster than in Microsoft Teams and slower than in Cisco WebEx. Joining a breakout room and asking for help is slower than in Microsoft Teams and faster than in Google Meet. Online questionnaires consisted of some demographics, a system usability scale questionnaire, aka SUS, which is a simple 10-item Likert scale measuring perceived usability for each platform, and some open-ended questions to let people express their opinions freely about these systems. Based on the SUS score, here are the grades on Bourgos grading system. Zoom's grade is B- based on the expert group A, which is translated to good. and A based on the expert group C, which is translated to excellent. Cisco WebEx has a C+ grade, which is considered okay. Microsoft Teams gets a B, which is good. Google Teams gets B+, which is also good. And Skype for Business gets D, which is significantly below the benchmark and needs changes to be considered usable. Based on the interviews and the questionnaires, some negative comments about the Zoom system were raised, like not seeing the messages that had been sent before a user enters, not muting the phone while attending a meeting from a mobile, or not having the ability to save files from chat. However, many positive comments have been mentioned, like quick entry with one click and even without logging in, easy recording, or multiple screen shares. The last evaluation that Expert Group A conducted was controlled user studies. As Expert Group A had focused on college students, the people that participated were 3 undergraduate and 2 postgraduate students. The user studies were really difficult to take place in that specific period. The tasks given to each participant were to present project while with sharing the screen, to ask a question to the moderator with raising a hand, and to send a message to the chat. The duration of the comments of the participants were noted. Here is the array of the average time that each participant consumed to complete each task. Sharing the screen took about the same time for the participants to complete it. Raising hand, which is the main issue in the Zoom system that is mentioned in every evaluation as problematic, took significantly longer to be completed in Zoom rather than in other 2 platforms. Sending a message took longer in Teams in contrast with the time in the other platforms. Some comments about this evaluation are that one participant couldn't complete the raising hand task on Zoom and gave up frustrated and angry. He clicked all the buttons of the main menu, but he couldn't find the raise hand button. Another participant found sending a message at Microsoft Teams unnecessarily difficult. Something interesting is that the times needed for completion of these tasks were close to the keystroke analysis that was performed by the experts. Furthermore, there are some design recommendations that experts mentioned that could increase the usability of Zoom. These were 13, but we will focus on some of them. The first is to keep the same look and feel between different buttons and show their clickability. This also goes for the main menu buttons. They should have the same look and feel, and their colors should be related to their state, enabled or disabled. Here we had the ability to click the raise hand button from the main menu, which is one of the most frequently used actions in a classroom. Finally, in the breakout rooms, the chat should explicitly represent the recipient of each message and where the message is coming from. Concluding, Zoom was rated as a usable platform that supports a rich learning experience. Also, the competing platforms were evaluated as usable except Skype for Business. A thorough expert evaluation is a good starting point. However, without the user views that confirm these observations and prioritize them, there is no convincing evidence backing the evaluator's views and suggestions. A strong example of the strength of such methods is that some of the concerns of the participants were about functional issues, although the experts focused a lot on the design flows. Unfortunately, the use of such methods was limited due to constraints imposed by COVID pandemic. The richness of study findings depends a great deal on the initial analysis of the context of use, including the set of scenarios and users' perspective. That's why the expert group that defined the most scenarios was able to discover more design flaws and to gain more ideas for design improvements. Thanks for watching and thanks for participating in our whole journey.